Kyle Klingman with Track Wrestling. We have someone that won't die. Rulon Gardner will not die. There's a new documentary coming out on the Olympic Channel called Rulon Gardner Won't Die. Rulon Gardner, best known for winning the 2000 Olympic Games, defeating the seemingly unbeatable Alexander Karelin, and he went on. He got a world championship in 2001. 2004 Olympic bronze medalist. He was an All-American in Nebraska in 1993. Rulon Gardner, how are you?
I'm doing really good. It's still funny to hear all my accolades from the sport of wrestling. It's enjoyable too.
Are you excited about this documentary coming out, Rulon Gardner Won't Die?
Some of the times I am. Some of the times, I got done watching it, I'm like, man, it's like, holy cow. During the show, there's footage I'd never seen, like winning the state title. I'd never watched that match. And, the Olympic Channel was able to find that material, talk to my high school coaches. We found that, like even wrestling the national duels against Iowa when we were at Nebraska, my senior year of college, to, wrestling Karelin the first time. And he threw me on my head 3 times and broke my neck in 2 places. So having that and be able to see that, plus the culmination of where I started to where I ended up, was just pretty amazing. And then to see, the ups and downs afterwards, mistakes made from my frostbite accident to plane wreck to motorcycle accident, there's just been a lot of these ups and downs, and people's like, oh, well, isn't that devastating? I'm like, I grew up on a farm in Wyoming, the youngest of 9 kids. Every day was almost a near-death experience because you just try to survive on the farm. We had a lot of just mishaps and stitches. At 5 years old, I was on the tractor and I fell off and I split my head wide open. So, at a young age, we just learned to deal with adversity.
What's it like being vulnerable and then having that vulnerability shown to the entire world?
That's the hard part. And part of me is like, well, yeah, they'll show the great moments where, you win the Olympics, but then there's also the moments where you failed, now I'm too big, I'm overweight, so I got to take care of that. To made bad business decisions, just different opportunities I've made mistakes in, and I think a lot of it's now trying to surround myself with good people, having better mentors to make better decisions. And I didn't really do that back when I was younger. And I think you see people who are really successful, they surround themselves with successful people. And as I looked at it, I thought about not doing it because of that reason there. But then I look back and, my parents, they raised us on the dairy farm because they wanted to teach us values of hard work. And my mom and dad always talked about their experiences, and they wanted their experiences to help us in our growth. And I'm a head wrestling coach at Harriman High School here in Utah. And my kids, I tell them these experiences and they kind of look at me like, that's not possible. And now here's a way they can see all the stuff I went through and, the tenacity and the guts to keep going for it when, seemingly, you're going to quit. And I've had my kids last year be like, oh man, this guy's a state champ. I'm like, okay, he's so much better than me. I'm like, he's okay. Yeah. But guess what? We can train to beat him. And some of them are, like, well, how can you say that? And some of my kids are like, now you used to wrestle, right? And I'm like, maybe look me up on YouTube or, take a look at my accomplishments. And the kids are like, I had no idea. Then you're almost a superhero. So I think it's about bringing it back to just the basic stuff of, this is a story that I lived, and it's not glamorous because you have so many of these great wrestlers where, people are like, oh, you were just predetermined to be an Olympic champion. I'm like, I didn't make the varsity wrestling team until my senior year in high school because my brother beat me every day until I was 17 years old. So for me, success at wrestling was something that wasn't easy. It didn't come natural. It was a process of continual development until 29 years old. I make the team, and then I shocked the world. And I think it was because of the great coaches that had taught me all of my childhood through the Olympic team. Steve Frazier, we used to wrestle 2-hour grind matches, not just because we wanted to be in shape. He wanted to create mental warriors. He wanted to create these athletes that could compete with anybody and beat anybody.
When you're making mistakes, do you have any idea that they're mistakes at the time?
When in part of mine, I actually trusted 2 or 3 bad people that ended up taking advantage of me financially. And when you started, I had one of my good friends say, oh, this is a great opportunity, and you got to invest in this real estate opportunity. And he's very successful at everything he does, and he's made a lot of money. And I'm like, well, if he thinks it's good, it's a good opportunity. And then halfway through, getting ready to do all the investment in it, he's like, I would probably step away. I'm like, it's too late. And I wish, I would have had a little bit more, foresight. But, at the end of the day, that started in basically 2006, 2007. And it's been, 10, 12 years to, go from the top all the way to the bottom. And then right now, I'm in my office, I sell insurance, I do that. I coach wrestling, and I still get to travel around and speak to kids and talk to them about setting goals. And, for me, it's just realizing, you've made a lot of mistakes, but what have you learned from it? And I thought about, after 2004, I could keep going. I still won the bronze medal. I still have, skill to get back to the sport of wrestling and try to make another Olympic team or two. But then I'm like, I want to have kind of a normal life. I want to, go home. I want to have a job. I want to, know what it's like to be on that side, because I have 8 siblings and they're all successful at what they do. And I kind of wanted to feel that too, because I had traveled the world, and I got to see 44 different countries. But, when I got home and I retired, both of my parents were old. My dad passed away within 2 years of me retiring from wrestling. And so I missed a lot of the important things that were back home. And so missing those, you never get those opportunities again. So you got to truly, recognize what's important in life.
When you made that 2000 Olympic team, did you think that you could beat Alexander Karelin? Because you had to know that he was going to make the finals. He was a 12-time world and Olympic champion, dominant, the force in wrestling. Any thought that you could actually beat this guy?
No. Honestly, straight out, no. But my philosophy, I wasn't there to win gold medals. I was there to compete and do my best. And so if you look at Karelin and his, background, he beat it, he beat everybody 10-0. In 97, when I wrestled him the first time, he picked me up twice, and they gave him a point for appreciation for the lift. And the third time he threw me for 3 points. And so I was thrown in his reverse lift. I knew how strong he was, and I lost 5-0. And when I got to Sydney, I made it to the finals. In the semifinal match to get to the finals, I was wrestling a Russian who had actually, lived now in Israel, and he was wrestling for Israel. And so I went out there against him, and I got down 2-0 in the match. And I had to come back from being down 2-0 to win 3-2 in overtime. Karelin's watching that. So I don't think Karelin thought that I was even going to be a challenge, because another setback, and people are like, this many setbacks, but you still won the Olympics. I'm like, yeah, of course. A month before the Olympics, we were in Russia and wrestling in what's called Podubny, a big tournament. Karelin didn't wrestle. So I'm wrestling this Yuri Petrikiev, the number 2 Russian. And I'm like, oh, I'm the Olympian. I was pretty cocky, feeling good about myself. I'm going to show you who's best. And I went out, and I typically, being a heavyweight, I wore people down. I tired them out. I was used to those 2-hour matches. So a 9-minute match was great, because at the end of the 9 minutes, I just wore you down to nothing. And as I went out there in that match, I'm like, oh, Karelin's watching, and I'm going to show how good I am. And I attacked him right off the whistle. 13 seconds into the match, he threw me in a hip toss and pinned me a month before the Olympics. So I was humiliated. I was devastated. And I said, okay, what are you going to do? And I put everything on the table, and I just left the crap, the ego and the attitude, the cockiness. And I had 1 month, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I came into Sydney like, okay, cool, the Olympics, let's go. I'm here to compete. I'm not here to enjoy all the scenery and everything. I'm here to wrestle. I'm here to do my best, because I'd made a commitment, while coming through college. I never won an NCAA title. And, oh, man, I'd love to have won an NCAA title through the process, but I hadn't. And so when I got to the Olympics, I realized I had one chance to maybe make that Olympic team, and it was then. And if I didn't go out there and give my absolute best, I'd fall short. And when I walked on that mat, did I think I'd win? No. But I realized I had an opportunity. And with Coach Frazier, we talked about how to beat Karelin, because he just went out, he consumed you. He was so strong. He had his 2-on-1 cross pummel. Frazier's like, Rulon, he's big and strong. You need to be fast and quick. You need to make him off balance. You need to make him feel uncomfortable. If you can do that, and Coach Frazier was always the best at first contact, you establish the tempo of the match. You let him know you're taking over it. You're going to control the match. And that's what we tried to do. After the first minute, his muscles started to get a little tired, fatigued, and that's where we started to grind him down into the second period. And as time went on in the third period, he's covering my mouth. He's trying to pull my head down, get me tired. I'm like, I'm used to wrestling 2 hours. This 9 minutes is a warm-up. And so for me, as the match went on, and people say, did you know at the end? I'm like, no, because you're wrestling the Russian, the guy who's undefeatable, unbeatable. How can you even think you can? Because after the match was over, I'm like, well, this is going to be funny, because there's no way they're going to let me get the gold medal. And to be on that podium, I was like, I asked Dan Chandler as I walked up, after the match, I'm like, Dan, what happened? He goes, I have no idea. It was just truly that magical.
After you won, you took a swipe in the air. Was that a swipe at your detractors?
It was all the people in my life. And, I grew up, youngest of 9, brothers and sisters. And so there was a lot of work on the farm that they chose not to do. And then as I started my education, they realized I had a learning disability. So at a young age, I was told that I'd never graduate high school. I'd never go to college. And, my mom told me in high school, as I talked to the advisor, oh, if you go to college, you'll flunk, you'll fail, you'll never be successful. So why go to college? Just be a farmhand and stay here on the farm. And I'm like, I want more. And my mom was a true believer in me. And she's like, Rulon, the only person that's going to hold you back in your life is you. Do not let anybody determine your future or your destiny. And so when I went out there, I failed many times over. And even when I started training for the Olympic team, and Matt Kafari's like, you'll never beat me. I'm better than you. And, it's just like my brother, all those 18 years of my life, losing to my brother through high school until finally I made the team. And so when I won, I remember hearing the Russians and thinking of all the people who told me I couldn't do something. And I kind of took it and I threw it right back in their face and said, look at what I've done. I've proved you wrong. I've accomplished something that very few people, my family's like, oh, we knew you were going to win. I'm like, you're crazy. They're like, no, you had it in your eye. You had that look and we knew. I'm like, I had, I didn't have victory in my eyes. I had stupidity or stubbornness. I don't know if it was the grit, but I think that's what sometimes you need. If you don't have the tools, you got to, act like you've been there before. You walk out there, you fake until you make it. You got to put yourself at that top level, because if you don't live up to that top expectation, you'll never know. And how many great high school wrestlers never go to college? How many great college wrestlers give up after college thinking I've maxed my potential? And I think that's the biggest injustice in wrestling in America is we think, winning a college, national championship or a high school state championship is the pinnacle of wrestling. I love to listen to the national anthem and watch the American flag being raised at the Olympics. And that's what I think the true sport of wrestling is about, is maximizing and, being the dominant force. Freestyle has been so incredible the last few years, and Greco needs a lot to work on, but having that, that opportunity to reach for those, stars, I think you've seen, especially in freestyle, you've seen so many more competitive wrestlers because they're starting to realize that we can be the Olympic champion, right out of college.
Let's put your Greco-Roman success into context. So there's been 5 world champions in Greco-Roman from the United States. There's been 3 Olympic gold medalists from the United States in Greco. You're the only one to win an Olympic gold medal in a fully contested Olympics. You're the only American to win back-to-back world championships. You're the only American to have multiple world and Olympic championships. So you win in 2000, shocked the world, but maybe more impressive than that is that you came back and you proved it in 2001. After going 0-2 in your first tournament, how did you make the progress to be able to get to the 2001 World Championships and win it, even when you're behind and you got that fall against the Russian?
And that was, the Olympics was truly magical. And after the Olympics, I went out and I started doing all these media tours and speaking and all the rest of the stuff. And so January rolled around. I went to a little bit of January training camp, but I had so many speaking opportunities and so many opportunities to go share my story with people. I didn't have a chance to train. So I went to Hungary and I lost to the guy that I beat later in the year at the Worlds. I lost to him in the first round. And then I lost to the Olympic bronze medalist in the second round. And so I was 0-2 and I was devastated. I was so tired. I wasn't in shape. And then I started to train, and, having that time and having, those losses underneath me was the best thing, because, we think, oh, well, once I win the Olympics, I'll always be at that level. Well, people are learning. People now don't take you for granted. They realize who you are. You now have a target on your back saying, we're coming for you, because you're the guy that they want to beat. And the same guy that, threw me in 13 seconds in Russia the year before the Olympics was the same guy who became the #1 Russian. And we're wrestling at the World Championships in Patras, Greece. And I get in the quarterfinals against him, and he scores 1 point for a takedown. And then I tried to throw him out of bounds, and he countered me for 2. So I'm losing 3-0 with a minute left. I threw him 3 straight times out of bounds, and all 3 times the referee waved off that, those points. And so I was given no points for appreciation, and they were some pretty amazing body locks. And right at the very last second, I came out there and I had 15 seconds left, and I thought, oh, you won last year. I'm like, bull crap. Get out of there. Get that negative thought out of there. I'm like, yeah, 15 referees hold me back off. And as I think I stepped in, I think I gave him a concussion when I threw him the time before. So I body locked, stepped straight in, picked him up, threw him, and pinned him as time expired. And that was the quarterfinals. I won the semifinals 3-0, and I won the world championships against the Hungarian. And this Hungarian's 6'7". I'm 6'1". These dudes are huge. But, and that's on YouTube now. I saw that video for the first time about a month ago, and it's like, man, that was pretty, you see these guys who are so much bigger than you, and you're just out there like a little bulldog, and you're just like, I'm not going to take nothing from nobody. And, that's just amazing to see that. And, I look at, like you said, all those accomplishments, but, I look at Mike Houck and Steve Frazier and Blatnick, and then Dennis Hall, him and Brandon Paulson, and Matt Ghaffari. I remember Dennis Hall, he's like, fuck, just, I'm like, Dennis, man, dude, you're 95 world champ, 96 Olympic silver medalist. I'm like, he is the real deal. And we saw that was such an, inspiring person to me, because he didn't take crap from nobody. He looked at the Europeans as his enemy. He went out there like, I'm nobody's friend here. I'm here to destroy people. And that was such a good thing for me to see, because we realized these guys were so much better. I didn't start wrestling Greco until after college. I was basically 23, 24 years old when I got exposed to Greco. I started wrestling Greco, and then 5 years later I win the Olympics. It wasn't because it was easy. It was because I had Matt Ghaffari, who was 3-time world and Olympic silver medalist, and then Jamil Byers, who in 2002 was a world champion. So we had 3 guys just beating the tar out of each other, fighting for that top spot. And I think that's what gave me that push over the edge, because it's like you were pushed every day in practice. When you got to the Worlds, everybody's like, man, just getting to the Worlds is the accomplishment. Making the team in America was the accomplishment back when I was competing. And so that's what drove us to get to that next level.
Is there anything that can prepare you for the instant fame that you got?
No, there was nothing, because as I'm getting ready for the finals, Corey Farkas, who was my training partner in Sydney, is like, what are you going to do if you win? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not, I made the team, and they're like, well, there goes any shot of us winning a medal at Greco, because I beat Ghaffari. And they counted us out. And they came in and said, well, guys, guess what they're saying about you? They told you you're not going to win a medal. And me, Matt Lindland, who won the silver, and then Garrett Lowney, who won the bronze. It's like, really? You don't? Oh, and that was, we loved it, because being counted out, being counted down, telling us we couldn't do it, you just made that more gritty. You made us, you really upset us. Let's put it that way. And so that was the best thing to happen to us. And so I think, going out, then all of a sudden, winning the match. And what's funny is there's part of my story, he asked if I was into Corey Farkas, you can do a cartwheel. I'm like, I don't know. And I won. I'm like, now what? And I'm like, cartwheel. And I thought of all the cartwheel stories in my life. I'm like, cartwheel. And everybody else was doing backflips. And I thought about backflip, cartwheel. Like Dumb and Dumber. In the movie Dumb and Dumber, he walks in the restaurant, he does a cartwheel in a front row. And I remember Dumb and Dumber as I just won the Olympics. That's how I think. It's a little bit different. But I did the cartwheel. And if you saw, I got up and I'm like, now what? I'm like, I don't know what to do, because I never thought about running around, the mat with the flag. I was completely clueless, because I had one goal after the Olympics, and everything was leading to the Olympics. There was nothing about, I'm going to go home and do this. I was going to take my dog to the lake when I got home after the Olympics. That was my only goal. And, when I accomplished it, it was completely a surprise. And, it was kind of shocking, because then, everybody's like, Jay Leno and Oprah and Rosie and, all these David Letterman, all these talk shows. It was just crazy. I got to go have the opportunity to share the story. And they're like, how did you win? I'm like, I don't know. You didn't have a plan? Well, yeah, sure, we had a plan. But how do you beat somebody who's unbeatable, And it was just a great coaching job by Steve Frazier and Dan Chandler and all the Greco staff, and plus all the great wrestlers around you. And in practice, man, we used to, we'd throw out, they'd bring all us together and say, who wants to challenge each other? We'd go parterre, and people would try to turn me. And I remember I had Ethan Bosch and, Dan Niebuhr and Steve Frazier. They love front headlocks. I'd give them the lock. I'm like, all right, go for it. And the only guy that passed me out was Ethan Bosch, and he actually knocked me unconscious one day. That's what we used to do. We wanted that battle. We wanted that. And I remember going with TC Dantzler, and he was 100 pounds lighter with me on the feet. And I just beat the tar out of him. And he's like, don't hurt me. I'm like, I won't. But that's the grit that we developed there, because we realized that the only way to beat these guys is you had to outwork them, out technique them. No, they're better than us at technique. So we have to have the contributing factor, and that was the Americans' grittiness. And nowadays they don't let you get away with it, but there's still ways. At the Olympics, my quarterfinal match in Athens, it got done, and the Bulgarian had all these little cuts on his face from headbutts, and he's 6'6". He has to come to me, and I'd have a little bit of a headbutt at the end, and my sister's getting in a huge fight with the Bulgarian group, and they're sitting there yelling at each other and all this. I'm like, my family told me, oh, Marcelo almost got in a fight. I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, she was having an issue with the Bulgarians after the match. And I'm like, okay, and I'm just there wrestling, but it's heated, because these countries, winning an Olympic medal is everything.
How do you deal with being national news every time something happens to you, whether it's the Biggest Loser or on a snowmobile? How do you deal with that?
Well, there's the great high moments, and then there's the dreadful low moments. Having the Associated Press write an article saying Rulon Gardner was involved in a Ponzi scheme, and they never retracted it. They never said anything, oh, well, this is what happened. People are just like, oh, Rulon Gardner made some real bad choices, and it just makes you look bad. And from that to the snowmobile accident, I put myself in a position I should have been. I didn't realize how bad the area I was in, and how not being prepared. I didn't have a fire starter. I didn't have anything to create heat that night, and I got stuck in an area where I didn't think it was that bad. Well, it's 6 feet of pure powder, and I had went down this mountain that was almost 2 miles up, and my snowmobile doesn't have enough power. So I got stuck in there, and that was completely my fault. But even after that, the plane wreck, I wasn't piloting the aircraft. I was with the guy. And so, having these things that, are kind of thrown at you, it's sometimes you just say, well, I'm responsible. And then sometimes it's like, I'm just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to live my life just sitting by, just being like, I don't want to do anything because I don't want to make name, or I don't want to be in the public eye. I don't think about that. I just want to live. I want to be happy, and, I want to be successful.
What are you doing now?
Well, for me, after I opened up a gym, and that ended up not going so well. And then I ended up taking advantage of that real estate deal. And so I kind of started all over from scratch. I had to kind of start over, and I moved back, and actually was a medical device rep for 3 years. I loved that. And I realized that I wanted to get closer back home to where I'm from in Wyoming. I live down here in Utah, so I'm close to home. And so I do insurance by trade. So I do home and auto, life and health. And so I think I do a good service there. You help people, you save people money, but then also you make sure you cover them, because insurance is about mitigating risk and understanding risk factors. And so I kind of have a little bit of understanding in that. And then also my insurance company, we have a safety app where we help implement safety programs for big commercial companies, contractors, that type of stuff. And we get people to start thinking about small decisions, because even coming back in the 04 Olympics, the first practice, I'm like, I can't feel my feet, after the frostbite. And I'm like, coach is like, why are you tripping and falling all the time? I'm like, I don't know. I can't feel my toes. Even today, I still can't feel my feet. So when I came back, I had to learn and think 5 or 10 seconds ahead of time to think, where am I going to be? How can I get him to step here to do exactly what I want to do? Because I had limitations. And so now I think so much about the future. And so my one goal is to be successful at business. But then secondly, I started coaching 2 years ago, going on my 3rd year now. And I absolutely loved, being out there. And I wanted to be a good wrestler, but I wanted to be a much better coach. And so now I'm having the opportunity to share that knowledge and that wisdom with my young high school kids. And, I sure would love to help develop, more wrestlers. I'm not worried about winning state titles or any of that stuff. I'm worried about making great men and women, and making, better people that can make a difference in this, I think in this society. Because you look at all the great wrestlers out there, they have a lot of great people out there. Their foundation is wrestling. And just walking in here as a few minutes late for the interview, and one of the guys recognized me, wrestled in high school, was a state champ in high school. And, talk to me for a few minutes and, oh, you're an Olympic champ. You're so much better. I'm like, no, I'm not. You know what? We're brothers. We're wrestled. We were on the mat together. Maybe we weren't for the same school, but, once you're a wrestler, you always have that mentality. And I think that's what drives so many wrestlers to be great, because they don't just take mediocrity. They learn from their mistakes and they take advantage of their opportunities.
It's been 20 years since you won that Olympic gold medal. How relevant is your story to people still to this day?
Well, some people nowadays say that the kids are different. The kids are not the same. And where I live in Utah, it's kind of a rural community, and these kids are still tough, hard-nosed kids because they still work on farms. But a lot of these kids, like at my high school, they hardly ever, do any competitive sports. And so you have, I think, limited, kids that want to come out because they don't want to do a combat sport because it's just not who they are. And I think, challenging a kid and saying, hey, you know what, you've never done it. Why not try it? Because you could be good at it. And you have some kids walk in and they get their butts kicked. They run and they're like, no, I'm done. But then you have those kids that walk in and they get beat up and they're like, I don't like this. I want to learn. I want to get better. And then you have those kids, and those are the ones that get exposed to it. And so I think, these kids nowadays may not be the exact same, but I think if we continue to show the greatness and the glory of wrestling, and you look at how many special forces and, military people have the background of wrestling, and it's like, I learned my toughness in the sport of wrestling because it was up to me and another human being of equal ability. And I went out there and I was the best. And that's what we need to do, is show not, oh, well, you have to work hard and you sweat and you get beat up. I think you look at the personal development, the achievement, the accomplishment. For me, I didn't look at a gold medal as being my goal. I looked at the opportunity to master myself every day, because when we started wrestling, when I was a kid, it was like, I hope I win the match. And then we got all the way to the Olympic level, and it was, I want to control every second of this match, because if I'm in better position, if I'm in better motion, better movement, and I can control the tempo of the match, I can beat him in every position. There's no way he can beat me on the scoreboard. So we actually broke it down, very minute details. And once you have the ability to do that, you can really focus on those little things you're making mistakes in. And if you can beat guys that way, you're going to be successful. And that's the way the coaching staff helped me develop. I think it's important that we continue to call kids out, because you have people like, well, our kids nowadays won't stick around. I'm like, BS. I'm like, these kids, you got to challenge them. I tell my kids, I don't know if you can do it. I don't know. I want them to say, yeah, I can, coach, watch me. I want them to say, see, coach, I told you. I'm like, good. Thank you. I knew you could do it. Well, you told me I couldn't. No, I knew you could, but you doubt yourself. And I want you to turn that doubt into belief, into desire and execution. Well, gee, coach, my kids, I tell them, I'm like, don't leave it. Don't make it an emotional experience. You be like a methodical machine. You analyze, process information, execute, and you figure out how to beat these guys. If not, you're going to go out there and be like, oh, he's so much better than me. You're going to doubt yourself, and it's going to discourage your true potential. And how many of us have left our true potential not out there, not on the mat? You've been like, oh, if only I would have done this. I've seen too many kids not accomplish their goal. I've seen Olympians, go out there and be like, I just wasn't ready for the tournament. I'm like, you had 4 months after you made the Olympic team. Well, I was thinking of all this other stuff. And when I got to the Olympics, I had nothing else in my life but wrestling at the Olympics. And I think, we need to teach people how to be more refined, because the Russians, their life is about wrestling. In America, we have so many other things, but if we can teach each other through that, you look at some of the different battles, you have, I think, David Taylor and Jordan Burroughs and now Jaden, and then, you have Schneider. It's like, holy cow, this is what's making, that's why we're going to be on the podium at the Olympics, because these guys are fighting, every day for that spot to make the team. And if we don't, maximize that and show those Olympic caliber athletes to our young kids, we're going to miss an opportunity to see the Americans do great things.
If Rulon Gardner won't die, how do you want to continue to live?
At the end of the documentary, I say I want to be known as a good person. And I do, because at the end of the day, you may have all the money in the world, you may be all these things, but you may not be a good person. And for me, I don't want to make it about worldly things. I want to make it about what did he do for the kids? Did he help coach? What, impact? And I've spoke to, hundreds of schools all over the country and made an impact and talked to the kids about setting goals and accomplishing goals. And when you get knocked down, getting back up, dust yourself off, going out there. And so for me, I want to live life. And one of my big challenges right now, in the last month and a half, I'm down, 35 pounds. I want to get back to my Olympic weight because I can't work out. We had a 220, pound state champ this year. I couldn't work out with him because I'm too big. And I want to get back to where I can show these guys, and I want to roll with these high school kids and actually physically show them what wrestling's like and be like, holy cow, coach, you're kind of tough still at 50 years old. I'm like, it's called old man strength. It's all we have left is that old man strength, but I want to let them know. And so for me, my goal is, by, the first of next year is be back to my Olympic weight and be able to come in and truly help coach these kids and, create fire into them. And so, a few weeks ago was at my doctor's office and she was like, oh, maybe you're diabetic. And she's like, Jimmy Christmas, you're not even pre-diabetic. You're doing good, but your body's in distress. And so as I watched the documentary the first time, I was so ashamed to see how big I was. And so I created an accountability team. I have Art Martori, with Sun Kiss Kids. I have Steve Frazier. I have Daryl Christian. I have Dave Swarovchek. I have, Cal Salvito. I have so many people that are on my team right now to help me get healthy again because, business-wise, things are going good. Wrestling-wise, I have a good team. But my last important piece of my life, the most important piece, is my health. And I haven't been responsible of that. And right now, that's my call to action right now is to get back and get my head back in the game instead of making excuses and, turning that old Rulon back on and, being like, in the document, it's so funny to see, Frazier talking about the grit and the nastiness. And man, I don't want to be that nasty because when you compete, man, you got to turn it on and it's always on. You're very tightly wound. And I was always a good person, but you got to be really focused because at practice every day, you got to beat world and Olympic champions in practice. Because if you don't, it'll build their confidence and they'll beat you in competition. So every practice was like a mini, Olympic trial. So I looked at every practice as survival.
Rulon Gardner Won't Die is on the Olympic channel. I appreciate you sharing these experiences. This is going to be fun to see what this documentary looks like. I think the wrestling world is excited to tune in and watch.
Good. And I hope kids realize, man, because, Olympic champ, that's so huge. And I remember in high school being like, that kid goes to college. Wow. And, I just remember seeing that. And I want kids to realize, even guys, I didn't do summer wrestling growing up. I got a small junior college offer and then went to Nebraska and I didn't quite accomplish my goal, at Nebraska. But what did I do? I kept after it. And if these kids can see that, because nobody's going to be a Jordan Burroughs or a Schneider, guys are going to, be like me. They're going to come out of the woodwork and, keep working. Like Ghaffari, when he first started wrestling Greco and they're like, holy cow, Ghaffari, he wasn't very good. But guess who won, 3 Olympic and world medals? Matt Ghaffari. That's the inspiring. Those are the people that you hear stories. And they said, oh, Ghaffari was this. And I'm like, really? And they're like, oh, yeah. He came so far. It was miraculous how he did it. And that inspired me, even though I had to wrestle him and beat him. He was there actually for my second competition ever. And he coached me. And I said, Ghaffari, isn't this weird? Down the road, I'm going to compete. He goes, Rulon, when Art Martori and the people at USA Wrestling ask you to help somebody, you help them. That's the way you do it in the wrestling world. And then here I was 4 years later beating him to make the Olympic team. And I have nothing but complete respect for that, for those type of people that say, I don't worry about the long-term aspect of it because I understand that this isn't just about me succeeding. This is about the sport of wrestling overcoming and getting people to see the glory of this great sport. And I think, youth wrestling now with women's wrestling, people are starting to realize, oh my gosh, yeah, you're on the mat, it's sweaty and, it's a little bit tough, but the art of controlling another human being, that is truly special. And, I had the opportunity to fight MMA. I didn't like trying to kill somebody. I didn't like, looking in his eyes, knowing I was going to knock him out, and then professional wrestling, my mom said, Rulon, I want you to be a good example and a role model to the youth. And you've worked your whole life as being an amateur wrestler. Is this really what you want to do? And she asked me not to. And I couldn't disappoint my mother and, stuck with the true values. And I think in wrestling, that's, I think, one of the truest, sports in the world is just the basic character you build on the mat.
Appreciate this time, man. This is awesome.
Thanks. My pleasure. And, appreciate you guys following. It's kind of funny, it's first, American athlete to have a documentary done by 5 Rings, and it's about a wrestler. So
Can't wait, man. I can't wait to watch it. So thanks for being part of this, man. Love your story.
Awesome. Thank you. And just one little last quick thing. So, it's not about the medals, but it's always fun to bring them out. And so, there it is. This should be in Russia, but guess what happens? Dreams come true if you work hard.